Hey, everybody. If you're listening to this, you are listening to the first free hour of this episode of The Shift with Doug McKenty. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the show in order to access the full feature-length versions of the podcast, as well as have access to the members forum, where we discuss potential topics and interviews and dive deep into the overall concept of the shift. For only $6 a month, not only do you get the full-length episodes, but also an opportunity to co-create with me, your host, Doug McKenty, the future of the show. Go to www.theshiftnow.com or patreon.com/theshift and sign up today in order to help make the shift possible. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Good morning, noon, or night, whenever and wherever you are listening to The Shift. I am your host. My name is Doug McKenty. This interview was recorded on January 12th, 2021. In this episode, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Robert Young as my guest. Dr. Young is the author of The pH Miracle: Balance Your Diet, Reclaim Your Health, among many other books and articles pertaining to his unique understanding of the importance of maintaining an alkaline pH within the body for optimum performance and the mitigation of disease. As with so many healthcare professionals working with treatment protocols outside the mainstream allopathic system, his ideas have been prevented from widespread use, yet the results are undeniable. By alkalizing the pH of the body of his patients, Dr. Young has managed to heal diseases across a wide spectrum of symptomology, ranging from diabetes to heart disease to cancer. Psychological and emotional imbalances are equally alleviated with his methodology. Utilizing Darkfield and multi-phase microscopy for blood analysis, Dr. Young is able to diagnose many of these diseases before symptoms even appear. Moreover, his techniques can be performed for a fraction of the cost of allopathic pharmaceutical interventions. The foundation of Dr. Young's philosophy relies on an understanding that in order to be healthy, we must live a healthy lifestyle. Good health does not come with a pill, but must be cultivated through exercise and diet. For those willing to accept that longevity and high energy comes with personal responsibility, Dr. Young's pH Miracle is certainly worth a look. While his protocol can be explained using the language of medical science and molecular biology, his message is ultimately quite simple. Drink lots of mineralized, ionized, detoxified alkaline water, and eat foods that promote a high pH. This means eliminating much of the popular Western diets that include acidic sugars and other complex carbohydrates, heavy proteins, and processed foods, and replace with lots of green vegetables, low-sugar fruits, nuts, whole grains, and alkalizing oils. While this diet requires some amount of discipline, the results speak for themselves as dis-ease symptoms are replaced with feelings of high energy, mental acuity, and improved health. In the pH Miracle, Dr. Young describes the science behind why it works, but also provides simple and easy-to-follow guidelines and recipes to transform your health through diet. Stay tuned for this conversation as we will take a deep dive into his protocols, how and why they work, and discuss his methodologies with the current scientific and cultural context. To find out more about Dr. Young's philosophy, including a mountain of videos, articles, case studies, and other content that fully document the efficacy of the pH Miracle, go to drrobertyoung.com. If you like what you're hearing, find out more about The Shift and check out all my other work by going to www.theshiftnow.com. I'm also on YouTube and Facebook at The Shift with Doug McKenty and Twitter at @DMcKenty. Enjoy this conversation between myself and Dr. Robert Young. I'd like to thank him for agreeing to do this interview, and thank you for helping to make the shift. And hello, everybody, and welcome to this. This is the 64th episode of The Shift. I'm your host, Doug McKenty. I'm joined today with Dr. Robert Young. He is the author of The pH Miracle. He runs a clinic down in Los Angeles that has been helping people now for quite some time, and it's pretty amazing. I can't wait to hear some of the stories that he's got, because his philosophy is that all disease really boils down to what is going on inside of your body in terms of the terrain. And it all boils down to pH, according to Dr. Young's theory. And if you can keep your pH up and you can keep it alkaline, then he believes that you are going to be a much healthier person and much more prepared, especially as you get older, to deal with any kind of disease that might be coming your way. So welcome to the program, Dr. Young. Thanks for coming on. Do you want to just give people a little bit about your history and
Hey, it's
background in
my
your own words?
pleasure. Oh, in my own words. Wow. Well, I guess my greatest accomplishment is I got married and had 5 children. So,
Yeah,
and
that
my second greatest accomplishment after that is I have 7 grandchildren.
is nice.
So, yes,
Congratulations.
I am a grandfather. I can't even believe I'm here at this particular point in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think of myself in my youthful 20s, or at least my youthful 30s, but I didn't even know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Right.
And I think that's the worst thing that happens to people is they grow up and they get too serious and they forget about that fun loving person that they were born, full of joy and happiness. And I've tried to live my life that way. I mean, I've had some terrible things happen, not only to myself but my family,
Mm-hmm.
and we deal with tragedy within our lives. But I decided as a young person that I loved science, and I always asked for science things for Christmas. Um, Chemistry sets, what have you, and eventually ended up studying more and more biology and the sciences, particularly biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Later, getting more into hematology. Studied in Germany under the protege of Gunther Enderlin, Dr. Marie Blecker, and I mean that was the beginning of what's turned out to be a 40-year career. And from her tutelage and her inspiration, I can say that not only did I stand on the shoulders of a giant, but a woman, not to make this gender specific, but I just want you to know that I'm happy and proud to say that it was a woman, even my mother, who taught me correct principles. Even my scientists were women. Even some of the greatest scientists today, Dr. Galina Migalko, teaches me. I'm a better man because I surround myself with better women.
Absolutely.
Than even myself.
Absolutely.
So, I've been blessed in that way. So I'm grateful to my mother, to Dr. Maria Blecker, to Dr. Galina Migalko, to other doctors, and of course some are men that I've had the opportunity to study under, and so I'm proud of that. Yeah. So you get certain levels of education, and eventually you find out you're educated beyond your intelligence, and you really have to come back to simple things and to your roots and your beginnings. And I love what Albert Einstein said: if you can't explain your science or a particular concept or theory simply, then you really don't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
And so in the PH Miracle book, which is, I never thought, here's another great woman, my Aunt Dit. She was the one that inspired me to begin writing. And I asked her, I said, Dit, I don't know how to write. He said, Robert, you know how to speak, and you speak very well. Now you just have to translate that into words on a piece of paper. I said, wow, what a novel concept. I like to speak. I can speak smoothly, and I can say a lot of things, and I have a lot of words to choose from. And she just said something very simply. You speak very well. You will be an excellent writer.
Yeah.
And so this is me that you're reading in my books. It is my mindset. One of my most recent books, you probably don't know about it, is this one, Alkaline. Dr. Young's mindset, pH diet and mindset. But it's just me speaking, what's coming from my mind.
Sure.
And then, of course, put down in words.
Sure.
It's made it so much easier to be able to write over 3,000 articles, over 100 published peer-reviewed journal articles, over 70 published books from some of the largest publishers in the world, such as Hachette. And wow, I never thought I would. I mean, it wasn't my goal to publish. I just never was a thought. I didn't really think I could do it. But for any of you out there that are thinking about can you do it, you can do anything that you put your mind to. Anything. It all starts with a particle of faith, and then you just have to believe in yourself and go for it. Because you really can accomplish whatever you set your mind to. That's the key, setting your mind to it. So, after I retired from professional sports at the age of 29, I wandered in the wilderness trying to think what I wanted to be when I grew up, or at least make a living. I'd already made a living and was successful as a professional athlete. So what was I going to stay retired? I have too much nervous energy to stay retired.
And you were a tennis
player?
player?
Probably the best thing to do if you want to read my CV. What's that?
You were a tennis player, is that correct?
Yeah, a tennis player, yeah. Yeah. So I made my living about 8 years. I mean, give or take a year or two. And, I played amateur sport. I then played, on the varsity team at the University of Utah. We were ranked one of the top 10 teams in the nation. And then from there, like everyone else was doing, Roscoe Tanner, Stan Smith, Jimmy Connors, we were all going out trying to say, hey, this is a great opportunity. Let's make some money while we're young. And we see that in people that are thinking about, should I go to college or should I get out in the world and take the opportunities I have to amass a fortune. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that I've been very blessed in my life, and my greatest blessings are my children. I mean, I can't think of any greater blessing than when I think of my children. And then next to that is, other than, those who are most dear to me, are my patients and the people that come to me. I just had someone write me from Africa, and he said, "I'm worried about my sister. I love my sister. She's been diagnosed with leukemia. Can you help?" Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, I want to help this person, but he's in Africa, and I'm not going to Africa anytime soon. So, I sat down and took the time and wrote an email, and he wrote me back, and I said, oh my heavens, wow. I had no idea that I would actually hear back from you. Huh. And I said, yeah, I can't help myself when someone is asking for help who do not have the means or the knowledge. Because if you have the knowledge, you can help yourself. And that's what the pH Miracle books are about. They're about empowering and educating yourself so you can take care of your own body. Because if you don't clean your own house, who's going to clean it? Yeah. I mean, you could hire it out, but it's never going to be done as well. And then if you don't take care of your body and it gets filthy dirty on the inside, where are you going to live? You only have one body.
I had a friend
you might as well take care of it.
Right. I had a friend that was practicing medicine, a college friend, and she eventually just quit doing it because people wouldn't change. And I wanted to have a conversation with you about this because in the pH Miracle book, I mean, you describe how people can go from disease or dis-ease to health, but it does require a lot of personal discipline and personal responsibility. And this is just the thing to me in my experience with my personal health is, everybody has to make these life choices for themselves. They can't be forced into it, and they can't really find the easy way out, which is what I think the allopathic medicine almost really, and the other question I have for you too is, would you describe yourself as a naturopath? Is that a term that you would apply to yourself?
Well, I have a degree in it. I'm a
Uh,
naturopathic doctor. I mean, do
right,
I own that title? I'm not my titles. I'm just Robert. You know,
right.
my mother said Robert, called me Robert. I've been known as Robert. I'm Dr. Robert. I'm Dr. Young. You know, to my kids, I'm Dad. To people out in the professional field, I'm Dr. Young. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
but I answer to just about any name, and I'm happy to answer to that. Just never call me late for dinner. I'm always interested in an alkaline meal. But I think of the words of Gandhi when he said, "We, meaning you, must be the change you want to see." Uh, we can educate, but it's really up to you to use that knowledge that you've gained and implement it.
Hmm.
You can't. It's your body. It's your life. It has to be your choice. You can't rely on somebody that's practicing tennis or medicine. Eventually, when you're on the tennis court and you're looking across the net at your opponent, don't look back at the doctor. Don't look back at the coach. You're on the court. You've got to perform. So it's no different in life when it's dealing with your health challenges. Don't look to me for the solution to your pollution.
Right.
You have to look to yourself. I can give you gifts of knowledge, and that gifts of knowledge are only as good as the individual, the person is willing to implement.
Hmm.
Now, because I had coaches all my life, even my father, who's one of my coaches, even I think of my late father, my late coach Harry James at the University of Utah, and I think about these people, and those were role models for me, and they challenged me to set goals. And so one of the goals was, you got to eat this way, you've got to hydrate. I mean, we were drinking water out of an aluminum can because that's what the tennis balls came in.
Right.
And it's really cool to open up because they were pressurized and they would make this cool little sound. But we would then put water in there. But the unique thing that was different than the water I was drinking and the water my opponent was drinking was I added salt.
Yeah.
Okay. And salt was the key to conductivity. I want to say that again. Salt is the key to conductivity. Energy and the flow of energy can only take place in a matrix of salt. And I remember when I was coaching my son, and he was playing an opponent, and it was a very even match, but I could see him running out of gas, out of energy. And then at the change up at the net where you change on the odd games, he's sitting on the bench with his face in his hands. And I'm going, oh my heavens. I was sitting next to his father. I said, would you mind if I give your son some salt water? Okay.
Hmm.
And so he said, no. I can see that he's dehydrated. I can see that he could possibly even pass out. I don't want him to suffer and I don't want him to be hurt. I would like my son to have a competitive match. And part of the competition is being able to withstand the length of any match. Well, I gave him the water. He took the salt, and within less than 60 seconds, he literally came out of this slump. He was energized, and then I saw him win the match against my son.
Yeah.
But it was okay. But I use that as an example is you can use, I mean, this is, I don't know, Gatorade, right?
Hmm.
Gatorade was built upon electrolyte water. Electrolyte meaning sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. and they would add that to water, and it was a football team, the Florida Gators, right? As a
Right.
Gatorade was salt water, and the football team was drinking that, and that was their edge. That was everybody's looking for the edge in sport,
Sure.
and this was their edge. Eventually, they started putting artificial coloring and sugar and what have you. You have today's Gatorade, but that's not the way it was at the
Right.
beginning. At the beginning, it was just the electrolytes, the salts in water, drinking that to sustain electrical energy so you could play at your highest level.
Well, that's one of the most amazing things about reading the book is so much of it has to do with the quality of water that you're drinking and then the salt water like you're talking about having the right salts and making sure that the water that you're drinking is alkaline. So like with Gatorade once they add the sugar to it, right? They just trashed it because now it's going to be super acidic. Um
Yeah, the body doesn't conduct electricity on sugar. In
uh,
fact, adding sugar to Gatorade robs the body of energy. So it steals energy and it suppresses it. And I've shown that in one of my YouTube videos. It's called Will It Light, where I've taken water with salt, turns the light on, and then taken water with sugar, or using the same water while the probe's in there and the light's on, adding sugar and watch the light go out.
mhm.
This is what happens to athletes. Tom Brady doesn't do this anymore. And the reason why is because he understands electrical conductivity, the reason for salts, and the drinking of alkaline water, which contains extra electrons, in order to then transport that on a matrix of salt to every cell. Because most people don't know this, we are electrical beings, but we produce acidic waste, but we're not necessarily physical beings. We don't run on carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Right.
We run on the electrons that they donate to our bodies. So we're electrical beings. We run on electricity, and that electricity is when I'm looking at foods and testing foods, those foods which are electron donor versus proton donor. Proton donating foods would be like sugar. Proton donating food would be like tea, coffee,
Right.
alcohol. Those take energy, they rob energy from the body. Where on the opposite side, you have foods like salt minerals, whole salt minerals, not processed. You have all the electron donating foods, which are all the green vegetables and green fruit.
It's interesting sitting here talking to you because
By the
I
way, you're looking like you feel better.
oh yeah, a little bit, a little bit. I could probably use a treatment or two from your clinic, but I'd like to get one of the blood tests done. Actually, I really would because I'd like to see what comes out of it. And I've been kind of even talking to my wife a little bit about it because um, the whole being able to build yourself back to health using these dietary tips and these hydration tips that you've got in the pH Miracle actually seems like if you have the discipline and you take the personal responsibility like you've talked about, you're talking about basically eradicating almost any disease, and certainly over time, not getting those diseases, the heart disease, the cancer, the osteoporosis, that so many people, once they get older, really start to suffer from. So, that's the miracle. But also, even the chronic fatigue, which was definitely an issue for me. I've had to change my diet a little bit, quite a bit, and added some supplements. But I'm a little bit of a fish out of water trying to figure out how to help myself, which was, I really actually appreciated reading the book because it gave me some more tips as to how to move forward. Um, but it's interesting to me because I've often thought about, you're talking about how the body is electrical, and I've typically thought about it more as like a fire based, I've always thought about the carbon molecule as something that gets burned in the cell or in the mitochondria and releases the heat energy that the body uses. But it's
Yeah.
not really that way, or is
Well,
it?
that science has already been No,
Hmm.
that science has already been refuted. Cells operate without the mitochondria. They are not
Okay.
the energy factors. The, the controlling uh, of the cell, the controlling aspects of a cell, is the membrane of the cell and its ability to maintain its integrity inside the cell and conduct electricity. Cells operate by electricity. In fact, we actually do a test at the diagnostic center where we actually test the electricity of the cells, and we measure that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that is something that we do. We also test something that is very unique to our center. Is we test the biochemistry of the interstitial fluids, which is 80% of the extracellular fluids, of which 20% of those fluids are vascular. So we test 100% of all the fluids to get a complete picture of the biochemistry, not just the electrolytes, but all of the elements found within these body fluids, both good, bad, and ugly. So this way, also, we can test the pH of the blood and have an instantaneous number on that, and we can test the pH and the biochemistry of the interstitial, which is the other 80%, to get 100% of the picture. So we know exactly what's going on biochemically within the human body. And then this leads to other functional tests, but it's kind of like when you go to if you're buying a car, you look at the engine, but you don't buy a car just by looking at an engine. You start the engine up, right? Well, going to your medical doctor is like going to figure out a problem anatomically, but you haven't looked at the engine and how it's functioning. You're not doing functional tests. And doctors talk about being a functional doctor, but they're not doing the most basic, fundamental functional tests that need to be done, and that's the largest organ of the human body, which is the interstitium, which contains these fluids that surround every cell, called the interstitial fluids. So there's a lot of false beliefs out there, one being that you need sugar for the cell, for the mitochondria to produce ATP energy, but that's a false belief. That's a false narrative. It's a false theory. And when we understand that cells energize themselves by bathing themselves in electricity in the form of the electron, which is carried in the fluids of the interstitial fluid, that it's the membrane that is seeking these electrons, and the cell then functions with or without the mitochondria.
So you also...
I'm not sure what the mitochondria does anymore.
Right. Interesting. And you'll also look at a person's blood test, and you'll look at it under the microscope, and you do this Darkfield Microscopy, correct? So can you talk a little bit about that? Because that, to me, I had did an interview a while back about the work of Gaston Naessens, Dr. Naessens, from France and then Canada, who
the Canadian doctor.
And he had developed this.
Yeah, you did an interview with him?
I did one with Charles Pixley, who was not actually a doctor himself, but a protege of his that helped spread the word about the cancer cure through the United States in the 80s. Actually did a little bit of time in prison because of it, because they came after him. But he's still out there spreading the word. So I learned a little bit about that. Yeah, well, he got off good because a lot of them were taken out. Yeah.
Over 200.
Yeah. I mean, it's really,
maybe more.
It's really unfortunate because, like, what you're talking about, it just makes so much sense to me to, like, do some blood work on somebody, figure out what's going on with their body, and then give them the diet and the supplements that are going to turn their health around. Instead of this allopathic system that we have today, where you go in and you have symptoms and they can give you some drugs that can mask the symptoms, but are never going after the root cause and never asking you to take that personal responsibility that we talked about to change your own health by changing your lifestyle, because that's the only way you can do it. I mean, right?
Well, it's like you really can't see if there's voter fraud unless you check the functionality of the Dominion voting machines.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, let's hide those things because we really don't want to know the truth. I mean, who
Right.
doesn't want to know? I mean, out of curiosity, wouldn't you rather know? I hope they're working. But if they're not, if you don't
Yeah.
test the functionality of this, it's
Somebody
no
should
different than
check.
not testing the functionality of the human body. Don't confuse me with the truth, with the facts,
Yeah.
because then I may have to change my opinion about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing for people is change.
Right. Absolutely.
Change becomes very different, though, that the only thing in life that is constant is change.
Hmm.
And you should enjoy it. What
Hmm.
new and exciting change is going to take place today?
Right. Absolutely.
Change is a universal principle about organization and disorganization of matter. It's a law of physics. Matter cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. It can only change its form and function. So when I was using dark field, phase contrast microscopy, bright field, electron microscopy, uh, staining with light, and chemical on occasion.
Hmm. And this way
Uh,
you can see the cells live. That's the thing. Like in the electron microscope, like you've got behind you, they have to kill it. They kill it with the stains that they use to put it under the microscope. But with the dark field microscopy, you can actually look at the blood while it's still alive. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah,
This
it's
is huge.
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The reason I moved from dark field to phase contrast is because I wanted to see what was going in the dark field. It was
Mm.
kind of like bringing up the curtain and being able to see better the activity, the morbid activity at the micron level, even the nano level, to be able to see some of the particulates that were being either expressed by diet or expressed from cellular breakdown.
Hmm.
So phase contrast, I developed a test called the unchanged blood test live. The reason it's unchanged is because I don't use any chemical stains. And since it's not invasive, it's really not considered a medical procedure. And it's for educational purposes rather than diagnostic purposes. But, if I showed you what healthy cells look like, it's not these cells that are behind me.
Right.
These are creating cells that are giving birth to appendages, that I refer to as the corona effect.
Hmm.
Not caused by any sort of infection, but it's an outfection. So I've had to change the terminology. Outfection suggests the disease or dis-ease, which is the loss of energy or enervation. Okay, cells begin to alter their appearance or change to adapt to their changing environment. We do that. When the weather is cold, we put on more clothes. When the weather is hot, we take our clothes off. We adapt to the environment. Guess what? The cells do this too.
Hmm.
They're no different. So the body cells, the red blood cells, and the reason I mentioned red blood cell is because it's the foundational stem cell of the human body. Now, what is missing here? What is missing here is a very, very important piece of knowledge that you need to understand. The red blood cell is the cell that becomes all other body cells. So when someone says to me, I'm losing bone, that's a reflection of the blood.
Hmm.
I can't put on muscle. That's a reflection of the blood because I know the muscle is made from blood. The bone made from blood. And
So,
so if you have something that's stopping circulation to your scalp, okay, the blood can't go there and differentiate into new cells that grow new hair. So you lose your hair. It's a circulation problem. If I have a patient with diabetes who has diabetic neuropathy, physiologically, I can't see their feet or their hands because blood energy, electrical energy isn't flowing to the tips of the finger. I can see that with my own eyes. Not just ask the patient, can you feel your hands? Are your hands cold? Are they hot? How's your circulation to your feet? my feet are always cold. Have you heard that one before?
Mm-hmm.
Or my feet tingle. Well, they're tingling. I can actually see it. Take a picture of it, you can see it. But it's tingling because blood is not flowing there. And when blood doesn't flow, cells begin to deteriorate. And this is what causes diabetic neuropathy. You don't have to be a diabetic to have neuropathy or to have cold hands or cold feet. These are the beginning symptoms. So if I can improve circulation to the scalp, to the feet, to the hands, no more cold hands or cold feet. No more hair loss. Hair can start growing again. These are all things that can happen if you provide the proper environment. For example, if you take a salamander and cut off the tail, what happens?
Right, it grows back.
Right. If you cut off a baby's finger, what happens?
Well, I don't think you're going to get
a newborn.
You're going to have the same luck. Does it happen in a newborn?
It grows back.
No kidding.
Yeah, it grows back. Yeah. The reason why it grows back is because when an egg is fertilized, one drop of blood appears. Blood is what regenerates. So fingers can regrow, teeth can come back, hair can regrow. All of the symptoms can be restored by focusing on the quality of the blood. So now back to this under phase contrast, where you kind of pull up this back of a dark field.
Mm-hmm.
You start looking at, and I'll show you what dark field looks like here as a comparison.
Okay.
Here is a comparison of dark field. Okay, you really can't see what's behind there, and here's phase contrast. So you get a different picture. Let's see if I can show you another picture here. But this is what normal red blood cells should look like.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they look like when the membrane and the genetics are disorganizing. So you get what is called the corona effect.
For people who are listening and not watching, a healthy red blood cell is going to be very individuated, very separate. And then once you start to see disease setting in, they're going to start to lose that structure. They're going to get kind of smashed together. They're not going to, I mean, you can clearly see they're not as healthy.
Well, misery likes company, they say.
Right.
So what happens is you see them in groups, sticking together, chaining together. And this is what causes pulmonary respiratory diseases.
Uh-huh.
Because the blood has to go into the capillaries. Anywhere in the body, single file is what causes neuropathy. It causes cancer. Cancer is at a higher level of enervation, which is of energy, which leads to cellular transformation, which leads to increased acidity, which leads to inflammation, induration, which is the crystallization of these acids called stones. And I can show you what a bloodstone looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knows what a gallstone looks like. Here's a bloodstone. It's a black one.
Interesting.
You see these black stones. Here's a couple more. Here's another one. Let's see if I move over a little bit. You can probably see it on this side. Hold on. There it is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's a lactic acid crystal. Yeah, those are called. I call those bloodstones. And I find bloodstones in just about everybody that I have ever tested. And bloodstones are here are the precursors to ulceration and degeneration. But it's induration where the body starts chelating or buffering your metabolic or dietary waste or environmental waste. So air pollution, water pollution, food pollution, thought pollution, all of these things contribute to a pollution of your solutions. And you need to clean up the pollution of the solution in order to reverse the symptomologies. But your practicing doctor who's practicing, you just happen to be the guinea they don't understand this evolution of transformation, and everything seems to be, black and white, germs, fungi, mold, antibiotics, well, we kill things. We destroy things. Disease, cancer cells. We got to cancer cells because they'll proliferate. What proliferates is this thinking. There are no cancer cells. Cancer is an adjective. Cancer is cells, but that's a reflection of its environment, of that cell. So in the book, The pH Miracle, the metaphor is the cell is only as healthy as the water it swims in, just as the fish is only as healthy as the water it swims in.
Right.
So if we have ocean pollution, don't be shocked when we see whales or dolphins beached and dead, because they're swimming in a sea, in an ocean of pollution. And we know that from the Gold Coast, off the coast of Australia, where there's a depletion of the coral reef.
Sure.
There's no mystery. It's caused by rain. Acid rain is the ocean absorbs waste from our pollution. It's literally using up the skeletal system of the ocean, and thus we have the degeneration or deterioration of the coral reefs. So we can see what acid rain looks like and its devastation. Google the forests in Alaska and acid rain. Okay? And you can see the devastation of acid rain. We all know what pollution of our cities look like, especially in Salt Lake City. If you're at 12 to 14,000 feet looking down into the valley, you can see the soup of pollution that people live in. It's a valley. And so it is one of the most toxic cities in the country.
Yeah.
That's a well-known kept secret, but it's a problem. And when you talk about Wuhan, I can't think of any dirtier city than Wuhan, China.
Sure. It is
so
amazing.
You don't need a virus to have respiratory disorders.
It's amazing.
But if you're looking at the blood, you can prevent this stuff.
Right. I mean, that's just what I was going to say. It's amazing that people separate the environment from their health, their internal and their external environment. Like they just think that disease. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that with allopathic medicine, it seems like disease is always either blamed on an invading virus that's coming from outside, or a bacteria coming from outside, or it's blamed on genetics. Like, oh, you just got cancer because it was genetic, or you have heart disease because it was genetic. And they never talk about toxicity, right? I mean, they never talk about like,
well, there's a reason
the
for that.
environment
There's
is causing these issues.
The first reason is for legal reasons. Okay?
Sure.
The second reason is because of ignorance. The third reason is for personal responsibility when they take on a patient and they give them bad advice. I've never had anybody walk out of the door of an allopathic diagnosis that walks into comprehensive, diagnostic resource that's looking at anatomy, physiology, functionality, electrical conductivity, biochemistry, hematology, where you find a dozen or more things that were actually overlooked.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, we're not talking about little things. We're talking about the elephant in the room.
Right. Well, I mean, you're able with the Darkfield Microscopy, you're able to see cancer years before it shows up, right? I mean, the stories are just crazy.
Well, we
They're
can
amazing.
see the effects of an acidic environment on the membranes of cells.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote my thesis for my doctorate in science on pathological blood coagulation. And you can access that document either in a printed format or you can get it online at drrobertyoung.com. But when you read it, it's a very technical document, and it has lots of fancy graphs, but it has pictures. Just seeing the pictures and realizing that in one drop of blood, you can see all aspects of your life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, in one drop of blood. And why does that make sense to you? Because you were born out of blood. And the anatomical elements that make up blood are little storage memory places,
right?
Hard drives. And it has stored everything you ever thought, ever did, or ever said, not just you, but multiple generations going back, because all of the thoughts and the words and the deeds from your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, your great-grandfather are encrypted on your anatomical elements. And you can literally access that information. The red blood cell is a hard drive for your life. That's why when I look at blood and I press it onto a slide, we're talking about a blood print. So a blood print takes on a form. If you have a tree in the forest, it's hit by lightning, and later in its life, it's cut down. You can look at how many years that tree is by rings. So you count the rings. There's 100 rings. It's a 100-year-old tree. Well, wait a minute. There's a blemish in the 15th year. Well, that was the year the tree was hit by electricity, by lightning.
Right.
It shows the damage encrypted in any specific area. That is so true. You can actually see when operations have taken place, where trauma has actually, physically and emotional trauma has actually taken place. When I showed this to another Nobel laureate, and I was looking at this person's blood, I won't mention the name, he said, "This is Nobel work." Do you know that? I said, "Were you nominating me or something?" He said, "Well, if I was, I wouldn't tell you."
Well, it's fascinating to me that you're doing this work, and clearly it's working, right? I mean, you have patients, you're doing a phenomenal job of healing people that have even advanced stage cancers, and people aren't paying attention,
Well, a great job. I must be a good teacher, which is what the definition of a physician is a teacher, because I'm doing nothing other than empowering, educating people to be responsible and take charge and take responsibility for the consequences of their lifestyle choices. Yeah. And when I say that, I know this is really being like tough love, but you are the illness of your choosing. Your illnesses, your diseases are the consequences of your personal choices. Mm-hmm. Now, I know when you're in the womb, you don't have a lot of choice. So you are subject, to what your mother eats, the health of the sperm, the health of the egg, and also going back multiple generations. That's very, very important for a woman or man to look at their mother, look at the father, look at the grandparents. If you don't like them, you may have problems later in life. Right. Yeah, because these are the words that are going to come out of your wife's. This is what's going to come out of your wife's. You're starting to act like your father. And then you're going to say, yeah, but you're starting to act like your mother. Where's that coming from? It's coming from the blood. It's called triggers. Environmental triggers, which then begin expressing all those memories, experiences. It's like deja vu. I've been here before. Well, sure you have. When I was roaming around Stockholm and in the King's Palace, having by birth, being a prince of Sweden, being part of the Bernadotte family, and that's another story that's quite interesting. But yes, when I go to the palace, I go, oh, this feels like home.
Yeah, it's all coming
I don't know if
around.
that makes any sense to you.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
So you are the sum total of not just your thoughts, not just your words, not just your deeds, but also your parents and their parents, and going back multiple generations.
right. And what they ate, everything that they ate. I mean, that's, just to kind of circle back around into the book and into the pH miracle. I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about, I'm looking at what I'm eating. I'm reading the book, and I'm like, well, man, I could change a few things about my diet here. And then I'm just imagining actually how challenging it is, because not only is it, what my wife likes to eat, what my kids are used to eating, but then I'm thinking about how I was raised, and the carbohydrates and the sugars that were just commonplace, and the processed foods. It's just been going on for generations. So, I mean, in one sense, it's a simple choice to make. I need to change my diet. I need to alkalize my blood. But in another
Hmm.
sense, you're carrying with you, generations worth of this behavior, which are just ingrained habit patterns that, like you say, are right there in your bloodstream. So it's an interesting quandary,
Yeah,
actually. I mean, it's as simple
and
as a
I've learned,
choice, but
I, yeah, and I've learned the language of the blood. It speaks to me
mhm,
in the way that it forms, in the way that it expresses itself, in the way that it coagulates. I know what healthy blood looks like when it's coagulated properly. I know what cancerous blood looks like without knowing anything about the diagnosis. I know what unhealthy blood looks like in a cancerous condition. And it localizes too. So it'll actually tell you exactly where the problem is without any radiation, without any, additional trauma to the body. You can actually know these things totally non evasively without drawing one drop of blood per se from a vein or an artery. It's just a little prick. You
mhm.
know, I have. Let's see if I have a. I mean, this is what the blood looks like when it's on a slide. Do you see that red area, that
Yeah,
drop?
yeah,
Yeah. So that's what it looks like, and I can magnify that many times. And of course, when I do, this is what you see, because this is my blood. You see, so this is what you see. And then if I want to look at patterns within the blood and how the blood is coagulating, kind of like looking at the rings of trees, or like the Chinese chakras, that I actually press. You see that? I think you
yeah.
can see it
Interesting.
better here
Yeah,
next to me. But you can actually see it? I
yeah,
press blood onto a slide. Every drop of blood is a fingerprint of the entire body. It's a hologram. So when I take one of your drops of blood, I don't need to know anything about you. I just have to look at one drop of blood and I know everything about you.
yeah. Uh-oh.
So, you know, uh, just as a case in point, I had a pilot fly out many years ago, and I took a drop and pressed it on a slide, and I looked at the pattern, and I said, "Wow, you know, you you really had an acidic breakfast." And he said, "Yeah, how did you know?" I said, "I mean, look at the blood. This is the how it expresses itself." And he said, "Well, what did I have?" He said, "Well, you had a bagel and a glass of orange juice." He said, "You got to be kidding me. That's exactly what I had."
Yeah, yeah.
He says, "You're good." I said, "No, it was just an educated guess. I'm not that good." I said, it's like, a sleuth. I said, "Well, I know what they serve on airplanes." He probably had the bagel with the, with the jam on it and the orange juice.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. Because I've seen what orange juice looks like on the blood. I know what bagels look like on blood. I know what eggs look like on blood. It's not a pretty picture.
Yeah. Wow.
But we walk around out of sight and out of mind and wonder why after we eat a heavy meal, which is really a heavy meal is a hardcore meal of acid, and we end up food drunk on the couch and falling asleep and have to sleep it off for about 10 or 12 hours.
Right.
It's called, in Japanese, it's called, well, not the actual language, but in Japan, they call it the drunkenness disease.
Yeah. Well, can I ask you one more question about the Darkfield microscopy? Because I was really interested. I had heard that the technology, like they don't, for whatever reason, the medical establishment hates this. They prefer using those electron microscopes, and I believe that it was it Rife who experimented with it maybe initially, and then Gaston Naissance, but Naissance had to like basically reinvent the technology. And then I heard that his microscope had been destroyed. So I'm just curious about the lineage.
Royal Rife, he was down here in the San Diego area, and he was also with Livingston Wheeler, who wrote the book called Progenitor Cryptocides. There's another giant in this field, but they were establishing all three of these folks, Livingston Wheeler, Royal Rife, and Naissance, all established the fact that matter does change and it evolves, and that's where the theory of bacteria is born in us and from us. And you can actually see these manifestations, and I documented that in 1994.
Right. This is the concept of pleomorphism.
Right, which means many formism, which means the matter cannot be destroyed or created. It can only change its form or function. So when you're looking at the anatomical elements, or if you're looking at the cell, even if you're looking at any cell that is theoretically outfectious or infectious, depending on what camp you're in, this is just a manifestation of something that's organized that's not living. Because if it was living, it would be the only thing left after it was cremated. And so all that's left are the living, indestructible anatomical elements, which are intelligent, which are living, that can become part of another organized matter, your plant, human. This is called, dunging your garden, so to speak, with bodies that are decomposing, and whether it be food, plant, or other types of matter, that this matter can give life to other forms. So, matter as it relates to our human matter is no different than plant or animal matter, other than that what brings a differentiation is the spirit which inhabits our physicality that makes us uniquely different. That's why we call it a soul. So, as Einstein said, you cannot separate. In fact, he said the separation of science with religion is lame. Because he realized there were a lot of things he didn't understand that had related outside of physicality to deal with those things which are spiritual. So the spirit body thrives on light energy. That light energy is manifested in the physicality world in the forms of electrons. That electron is transported on a saline solution. And that saline solution is in a simple term called salt. So salt is what conducts this life force energy and gives us life. It's also the glue that holds the spirit matter connected to the physical matter. So when sodium ions start decreasing from their ideal at 145 to 135, as soon as you go into chronic care, they hook you up to an IV of what? Cheerios? Ice cream? No, they hook you up to an IV of salt. It's not enough. It's only 0.9%, 1% saline. But if you ask any doctor or any nurse why you're doing that, I says, well, that's how we keep our patient alive. Oh, my heavens. I was just told by my doctor that I shouldn't take salt.
Right.
And now you just hooked me up to salt.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so I mean, what an oxymoron.
Well,
The bottom line is that single-handedly is the element for treating all sickness and disease, is maintaining the alkaline design, the salty solution of our body fluids, of which our fish or our cells swim in. So this is all I'm doing, is educating people on the importance of managing and maintaining the alkaline design of the body as the first hypothesis to my theory that there's only one sickness and one disease and one treatment. The one sickness and one disease is the over-acidification of the blood and then the interstitial fluids and tissues due to an inverted way of living, eating, thinking, breathing, feeling, and believing. And the one treatment is to restore the alkaline design of the body through opening up the channels of elimination to remove excess toxic poisons and to restore that salty alkaline condition, getting rid of our addictions that we grew up with as children, unknowingly, with the etiology that you need sugar to thrive. That was the lie. And you don't need salt, go off salt, start eating sugar, and you'll thrive. That's exactly the opposite of what you need to do.
Right. It's fascinating. I mean, we have an entire culture that's based on sugar that's been going back. The history of colonization was built on sugar plantations. I mean, you know.
Well, if you go back to the Roman and Greek times, then you come up with the word salary or soul, because that's how you were compensated, with salt. The word salary comes from soul or sal, which comes from the word salt. You were paid a salt salary, for your work.
Right.
A salt salary.
Yeah, this will keep you alive for one more day of work.
Yeah, well, people, they drink coffee, and wondering why they're losing their sexuality and it's changing them hormonally. And for a man becomes more like a woman becomes more like a man. And 30% of all breast cancers are men now. And you lose your sexuality. You lose your identity with sugar. You regain it when you put salt back into the body.
Yeah, it's actually really fascinating. I mean, I hadn't thought about this, especially the electrical conductivity part. I think we've all been raised, if we even know much at all, you're going to be told about this, again, like this fire-based, burning calories. How the cell works is all based on, it almost seems like there's a little furnace in there that's burning calories. But this whole concept of salt and electrical conductivity really shifts the paradigm into thinking completely differently about health. And then you get into thinking about creating the kind of terrain that can promote that action for energy instead of
for healing a wound, there's nothing like putting salt in the wound.
Right.
If you want to heal the body, you got to put salt back into it. And a lot of people don't even know this, that the major organ, the factory that produces alkalinity is, the answer to that question?
The stomach, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. See, I learned from your book.
Yeah. So the stomach is responsible for managing and maintaining. True immunity begins with the stomach. It doesn't begin with the white cells. They're down the list. White cells don't provide any immunity whatsoever. It's the environment that provides immunity, and it's controlled by a group of glial cells. A bundle of cells are called astrocytes a bundle of cells in the brainstem that controls homeostasis of all the elements within our body, temperature, body chemistry, and it directs the stomach to begin producing sodium bicarbonate when a woman is pregnant, producing 1.5 times more acidic waste in the development of a fetus. And when the body needs alkalinity, stomach produces it. It pulls it into the blood to alkalize that waste product, and you end up with a belly full of hydrochloric acid, and then you're on the toilet or over the toilet, either throwing it out at one end or the other. Stomach. If you have an upset stomach, that's the body's need for alkalinity. If you have a diarrhea, that's the body's need for more salt, more sodium bicarbonate. The stomach needs help. Doesn't need an ejection to fight off an outfection. It needs alkalinity to restore the alkaline design of the body fluids.
Right. Well, that sounds like a plan, Dr. Young. I think we might wrap it up with that one. It's we've been going for an hour and 45 or so here. Do you want to let people know where they can go to find out more information about your work? I'm sure a lot of people will be interested. I hope so anyway, because I think that you're really onto something. And I mean, just keeping this knowledge alive is so important so that people have the option. You don't have to go to the allopathic doctor if you don't want to. You have these choices. And so I really appreciate you coming on the show and enlightening people.
I have to tell you one more story and then we can go, okay?
Let's do
it. The story is a man by the name of Dr. Neil Solomon, a PhD and MD at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. He was a professor of physiology. He came out and visited me for 2 hours for 3 days. What I mean by that is he was only coming out for a couple of hours.
Right.
He stayed 3 days. He was so fascinated that when he wrote his report about who I was, or who he thought I was, but now he knew who I am, he wrote a statement. In fact, I included it on one of my books called Sick and Tired, Reclaim Your Inner Terrain, which is another book you probably ought to get a hold of.
Okay.
But he said, Dr. Young is on the threshold of a new biology that will change and revolutionize the biology and medical world as we know it today. And he was the head of research at Johns Hopkins University. When I was in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, at the university, at Morehouse College, at the invitation of the professor there, who was the trustee for the Martin Luther King, the trustee. And he had me speak there at the Martin Luther King Cathedral, which many great men and women have spoken at. While he was introducing me, he said to the audience that Dr. Young is the Martin Luther King of the 21st century. His name was Dr. Professor Lawrence Carter. Now, here was a man that was diagnosed with cancer that decided to take a different path. And his condition reversed itself because he took charge of his body and restored the alkaline design of the body fluids. And we've been friends ever since. In fact, he was responsible to having a new course of study at the medical school using my book, Sick and Tired, Reclaim Your Inner Terrain, as one of the textbooks that was required reading for the medical doctors there. That program only lasted a year because the university was threatened the loss of funding if they continued promoting my science.
Right.
This is what I've been up against. I don't believe it. I can't believe it. At that time, this isn't true. I take people as being basically good, with good intentions. Adults, as they get older, they lose that goodness and they become very self-centered or selfish.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they make decisions in their lives, as I have. I'm not perfect by any means. But one decision I have made, that knowledge that has been God-given will continue to be uttered off my tongue to the world, regardless of the consequences. So if you want to learn about this and protect yourself, to protect your loved ones, to protect those who you care about most, that you sincerely within your heart want to take control of your life and be responsible, and that you want to enjoy thriving rather than surviving, then most of this is all done. It's all up to you. You just have to want or have the passion for learning. So go to drrobertyoung.com, drrobertyoung.com. And it's going to take you years to go through all the information there, to read the articles, to watch, all the videos, to read 3,000 articles, to read 70 books, to study those. You don't have to study them all. You can read one book at a time, The pH Miracle. Or you could start with Sick and Tired. And you will change your life forever. And that's really motivating for me, because when people write back, say, thank you, for the sacrifices that you've made over the years, because I'm the benefactor of that. And that empowers me to want to do more for humanity. Regardless of whether you're in India or Africa, United States, wherever humans are, they have the right to this, and this knowledge should be free. Take control of your health. Don't go out and buy a health insurance policy. Go out and buy a book and read it. Empower yourself to take control of your own health. True health care, not sick care. And I would just encourage you to try to learn something new each day that will help yourself and those who you care about. So that's probably the first place I would have people go, is drrobertyoung.com. And from there, you can kind of branch off to a scientific blog, to published papers, to who is this guy? You can read my CV. I'm an open book. The good and the bad and the ugly is out there. So I am who I am. And a lot of people are glad for that. Happy for that. So I can say, thanks, Doug. God bless you. God bless America in these trying times. God bless humanity. And I pray that, as Moses admonished us, is life and death is in the blood. It is the blood. As Muhammad said, don't you understand that you were made out of one drop of blood? And when you understand the importance of your blood and living in this world of physicality, you learn more about it. You'll know how to protect yourself. Mm-hmm. Protect your internal environment, especially from all the incoming, chemical, radioactive, contributing factors that are making us sick. You can protect yourself from this. So look upon the Holy Grail. Look upon that serpent, on that staff, which the children of Israel perished wandering in the wilderness. My people perished, as Hosea said, from lack of knowledge. You don't have to die. You can live, and you can go and inherit the promised land. It's there waiting for you, whatever that might mean to you. So thanks again, Doug. All the best to you and your family.
Absolutely. Likewise, Dr. Young, thanks for coming on the show. I hope that people get a lot out of this interview, and I'll do what I can to spread the word. I think it's really unfortunate that we do live in a world where information like yours, life-giving information that I know has helped a lot of people, and there's a lot of documentation that this works, and it works for very sick people. But we live in a world where this information doesn't get out there and is covered up and it's suppressed. So I'm just happy that I'm able to do my small part in helping to get the word out. And so for those of you who are listening to this, I hope you do feel empowered, and I urge you to check out drrobertyoung.com and check out the books and check out the information, because you can learn a lot if you have the discipline and you take the responsibility for your own health. He can really teach you how to turn things around and live very healthy and a very long life. So thanks again, Dr. Young, for the information. I'll just let people know that you can find all of my work. This is The Shift with Doug McKenty. I am at theshiftnow.com. I am at D McKenty on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook and YouTube at The Shift, or The Shift with Doug McKenty. So if you look it up with my name, you'll find it, and you can find all of the rest of my podcasts and all of my other work at the websites. I'm actually urging people to go to the websites these days, since the social media thing doesn't really seem to be working out for a lot of us. But thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, Dr. Young, and you take care of yourself.
Thanks, Doug.
You bet. Have a good
one. All right, you too. Be safe.
You too.
All right, ciao.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was my conversation with Dr. Robert Young. What an interesting conversation it was. I really enjoy having these talks with people that come from outside the allopathic system. I always consider this podcast to be a voice for the voiceless. And guys like Dr. Young just don't get a chance to get their voice heard nearly enough. I think this guy's stumbled across a system of healthcare that works really well. It's extremely inexpensive, and the benefits, I think, speak for themselves. Of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice, but from what I read in the pH Miracle, I would certainly recommend checking this protocol out for yourselves. It does require discipline, and it takes personal responsibility, but really at the end of the day, I think we all know that our personal choices define our health, and we have to change our bad habits if we want to become healthy people, and that's all Dr. Young is saying. And then he outlines a protocol, a way to do that, that can improve your health tremendously, according to him and according to the testimonials on his website and the patients that he's helped in the past. And this guy, I tell you, has helped people in the situations of later stage cancer where allopathic medicine is writing people off, and they can go to Dr. Young and they can have their problems solved and go on to live healthy lives. So these testimonials are pretty incredible. If there's something to it, and it really looks to me like there is, then it's worth having more and more people look into it. Also, Dr. Young really does know the science behind why this works and how it works. So I don't understand why, other than pharmaceutical corporate greed, why ideas like this aren't more popular, and certainly not debated more openly and outright. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, I'm calling this the teleology problem. As we, a lot of times on this program, I talk about patriarchal and hierarchical systems. And certainly allopathic medicine is one of those, where just a handful of people at the top choose the treatment protocols that everybody on down the line has to use. And if they don't use these, then they could get sued, or certainly they could lose their license. There's lots of examples of people that have strayed from the enforced protocols and then found their careers in trouble, sometimes even doing jail time. So ideas that get outside of the mainstream, outside of the corporate narrative, are really frowned upon. There's a lot of pressure from these naturopathic and holistic doctors to not do what they're doing. Dr. Young himself actually is taking a chance. He knows this. He's sticking his neck out there because he really believes in this protocol, and I think he's helped a lot of people. This teleology problem is just that. It's like these hierarchical systems are top down. Only a few people decide the protocols that are going to get used. And so the entire direction, teleology is like a telescope. It depends on where you're looking. If you're looking for how you're going to profit the most, then maybe that's what you're going to find. So this whole science of healthcare is looking how to profit the most off of people's health. Well, in a free society, where we're allowed to choose our own healthcare treatments based on what our doctors tell us in the situation of informed consent, and we agree on certain treatment protocols, we should be allowed to do that. We should be allowed to make these choices for ourselves about what we do with our own bodies. My body, my choice. It's very simple. And in this way, what we develop then in a healthcare system would be a self-organizing system, where it depends on the choices of the people, the individuals that choose the types of treatment protocols that they want for the kind of disease symptoms that they're feeling. And the more people, the more individuals who choose a certain treatment protocol, well, the more popular that becomes, and it spreads. And this is how natural systems evolve. So if we had a system based on healthcare freedom, rather than this top-down patriarchal system, this hierarchical system, this system that's set up more like for military use, not for civilian use, then maybe we could see a system where people like Dr. Young would really get the credit that they deserve. There were a couple of things that he discussed that I just wanted to mention, one of which is his whole feeling this mineral salts-based alkalizing diet is based on the idea that we all get our energy from electricity, that the human body is an electrical system. And I had this interesting conversation with him where I was talking about how I've always thought that the carbohydrates get burned and our system is based on fire. And he's saying, no, no, it's based on the mineralized salts and the electrical system that is created out of that. And it just got me thinking about systems like the traditional Chinese system, the five-element system, or the Hindu system, or the Native American systems, indigenous systems, where they talk about balancing of all of the different forces of nature, all of the different elements. And perhaps, our society as it evolves, I think very clearly we've been living in this system for the last 2,000 years or so that is, I would describe as a fire-based system, the system of colonization and the system of empire that has really engulfed our world at this point. And so I don't think it's by accident that our mythology about how our body works, it becomes this internal combustion engine, right? And it's based on fire, and we presume that that's how it works on a cellular makeup now, on the cellular level. But thinking about it in terms of electricity, it just changes the feeling, and it changes the sort of the foundation about the way that we think about our bodies. And it just kind of struck me. A lot of people right now are talking about moving into the new age, and that we've kind of maybe ended this age of fire. Maybe we're going into this age of electricity. Maybe we're going to start thinking and having mythologies, and our science is going to start to reflect a different elemental foundation for how we think about our health. And maybe Dr. Young is just a little bit ahead of the curve on that. But I thought that was a really interesting aspect of his take on how the human body works, and it's foundational actually to the whole idea of the pH miracle, having an alkalized pH in your body, and how the cells work on a cellular level using electricity instead of fire. And just to continue on this thread, because this is kind of, I think, maybe my forte, my concept of the shift is trying to shift out of this colonized mind, this system of empire, this patriarchal system of consciousness that we've been under for so long now, for some of us, some of our families now for thousands of years. Some have just been recently colonized, and some are being assimilated as we speak, unfortunately. But he talked about the idea of the root terms of salary, of the idea of having a salary, that as the ancient Roman Empire was developing essentially this caste system that we still live under to this day, where there's, the upper class, the predator class, that really is very controlling of everything that happens, and then lower classes on down, almost a caste system. I would describe it as a caste system personally, where then you have the lower classes that are the worker class, where basically we're all enslaved one way or the other through debt slavery, and maybe through the Great Reset. Now we're moving on to this Internet of Things and this new artificial intelligence, this new form of slavery. It seems that the predator class wants to impose on us now. but that the whole thing was based on salt, right? The root of salary is salt. And when the working class was developed 2,000 years ago under the Roman Empire, they would actually pay the slave class in salt, knowing exactly how life-giving this stuff was and knowing that people couldn't live without it. So it was the first tool that they used, just like now they're using the fiat currency tool and creating a debt slavery system. The first tool that was used by the empire builders thousands of years ago was salt. So maybe understanding how salt works in our body is part of actually liberating ourselves from that system, individuating ourselves, and empowering ourselves through our health to rise above it, to transcend it, and to be able to be our own person, separate from the colonizing effects of this empire. So, I guess to say that this process of decolonization is actually a taking back of the salt. I mean, even it just kind of reminds me of Gandhi in liberating the Indian people, at least as much as he did from the British Empire. Arguably, the British system, the British Empire is still very powerful there, but one of the first things that he did was non-violently get people together to process salt from the ocean, saying that salt was a human right. And in fact, at the time, the British Empire made it illegal for people to get their own salts, and forced them only to get the salts that were allowed through the British Empire monopoly. So another interesting story, and another connection between salt and colonization. So anyway, hope you really enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Young. If you want to find out more about the pH miracle, and I highly recommend it, you can check it out at drrobertyoung.com. And of course, as always, you can check out all of my stuff. I've got a couple of the Psychology of Lockdown series, as well as all the roundtable discussions and my old podcast that I did here in Mendocino County on KZYX Radio, all posted at theshiftnow.com. So go take a look at that if you like. Maybe sign up for the newsletter and think about subscribing to the show. I can use all the help that I can get. Man's got to eat. So if you feel like supporting what I'm doing, please think about it. It's only $6 a month. You can go to theshiftnow.com for that. Also find me on Facebook and YouTube at The Shift with Doug McKenty, and I'm on Twitter at DMcKenty. So thanks again for listening. I've got a couple of good episodes coming up. Just want to remind people too, coming up on the 25th, Derek Brose is doing The Greater Reset. You can find that on the internet if you just look up Derek Brose and type in The Greater Reset. He's looking for, he's having a bunch of speakers get together to talk about that, to talk about solutions and what we can do to escape this technocracy as it seems to be moving so quickly our way. And one other thing happening politically, and I'm going to be interviewing Tewodros Fikre, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, from the Gihon Journal. He is starting a movement called #WildcatStrike. #WildcatStrike USA 2021, and he's trying to organize a workers' strike against all of this strife, against both the racial division and the left-right paradigm, in order to unify the working class against the predator class. So I want to be as supportive of both of those movements, and I'll be talking to Tewodros here tomorrow. So I'll get that out as quickly as possible, hopefully early next week. All right, thanks everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.